Hello, listen to a story that happened to a young girl. Why did this happen to her? Looking at her child, Reza Ivanovna was delighted. He had matured and become such a handsome man. He was beautifully dressed, standing in front of his reflection, preparing for his wedding to a stunning woman. He was raised by her alone. When he was 5 years old, his father left the family. He claimed to have found a wealthy woman and that he earned more. Since she already had a son, Reza could not grieve. To him she gave her whole self. She became aware that she had spoiled him excessively as he got older. He shared the desire for a better existence of his father. However, his main goal was to locate a wealthy bride, not to better his life. She insisted that he must use his own wits to organize the good life, get a job and a decent education, not seeking a wealthy spouse. Natasha was therefore thrilled when he took her to meet her mother. She was a lovely, smart young lady. She was raised in a typical middle-class household with affluence. Ivan began to study more effectively after he calmed down. He and Natasha were classmates, and following college, they made the decision to get hitched. Sadly, Natasha's mother developed a serious illness and passed away before her daughter was wedded. As if the girl were her own, Reza Ivanovna fell in love with her, and the girl recognized it and returned the affection. They are getting married tonight. The ceremony will be understated. They will exchange vows at the registry office before leaving with a few of the young couple's acquaintances to go to a cafe. The cafe was where Reza Ivanovna spent some time. The young people will be more fascinating without her because she was overly excited today. The youths made the choice to temporarily remain at Ivan's. They could not afford to rent a home, and Natasha was the only one who had found employment. Her parents had left her a small apartment in a neighboring town. This led to the decision to hire it out. The situation was excellent. The fact that her son didn't attend many job opportunities was the only thing that brought her sadness. Yes, he ventured out, but he frequently returned intoxicated and clearly not for a job interview. But you can't do that, kid. You and Natasha both have the same degree and are employed. You don't comprehend, Mom. Since Natasha studied more effectively than I did, the company where she completed her internship asked her to work there. And I'm also searching for one. I also don't want to labor for nothing. However, you must begin somewhere. You won't be hired as a boss straight away. But as a male, you must support your family. A woman can't bear the weight of the world alone. What will you do when you have children? Right now, having children is not in our plans. We need to stand up again. And you have to fight for that, his mother interjected. Ivan resorted to a strategy from his early years when he realized his mother would not stop. He approached her, gave her a big hug, and reassured her that everything would be all right shortly and not to worry. Ivan returned home a week later when everyone was already there. When he revealed that he had landed a job, he placed a cake on the table. Everybody was content. He also discussed what his supervisor had said about his potential for advancement in the workplace. After a couple of months, Reza Ivanovna's excitement over her son finding work started to wane. She observed a change in her kid. He frequently had a feminine cologne scent. "Vanya, are you cheating on Natasha?" She questioned him outright. "Mom, what sort of foolishness is this? I frequently stay late at work. I don't have time for this. How about the perfume?" So I remove my jacket and place it in the main closet. 3 other women work in my area with me. Sadly, some people enjoy spraying scent on themselves. She became a little less agitated following that exchange. Ivan was granted a promotion and a company car 2 months later though, and once more she began to harbor misgivings. After receiving a promotion, Ivan started taking business trips and frequently remained late at work. Natasha, however, paid no attention to anything. She adored her spouse dearly and rejoiced over his accomplishments. Additionally, she had to let everyone know today's excellent news. Natasha announced her pregnancy to the entire family following a family meal. Ivan initially considered it, despite Reza Ivanovna being extremely pleased. "Is it not too early for us? Honey, you're currently employed so that we can rear the child. We don't have a home of our own." "Well, Grandma's not far away. I can leave early for work. Mom, I assume you'll assist us." She has long referred to her mother-in-law as Mom. "I will, of course. I have a lot of vitality left." All week, Ivan had been depressed. The news hadn't made him pleased. He grinned at his wife, but his disapproval was obvious the moment he turned away. Reza Ivanovna observed everything. It made her heart tremble. She was the only one to fault for missing something during his upbringing. Ivan advised Natasha to go buying and purchase gifts for the new year over the weekend. Reza Ivanovna felt uneasy about this. Ivan advised Natasha to go buying over the weekend to unwind and purchase gifts for the upcoming year. Reza Ivanovna sensed something was off. "Can't you leave after that? There are still 2 weeks left, and the weather is icy." "Mom, please settle down. I'll drive carefully and have a nice car." They had been gone for 5 hours and still hadn't returned. Natasha did not answer Ivan's phone because it was off. The location of Reza Ivanovna was lost. Her daughter-in-law's phone immediately began to ring. "Where are you, Natasha? How are you doing? Hello, this is the physician at the public facility. How are you related to the phone's owner? I am her mom. Specifically, the mother-in-law. What is the matter with her and my son? Your son is doing well and will return shortly. Even though we urged that he be hospitalized, he left." On the other side, the girl suffered serious injuries. Reza Ivanovna hurriedly dressed herself and said, "I'll be there shortly." Ivan entered the flat as she was getting dressed and calling for a cab. He was hobbling a bit and had some minor facial scratches. "How come you're here? In the hospital is your fiancé." My mother erupted in fury. "Mother, not now." He entered the room after making a rather offensive comment. Reza Ivanovna hurried to the hospital because she didn't have time to argue with her boy. She was informed by the doctor there that a mishap had occurred. Outside of the city, a tree was struck by the vehicle after it slid on the ice. "What outside the city?" "To the Emporium they were going. Your son informs me that his wife has asked that they go for a walk in the nearby woods for some fresh air. That's all." The passenger side of the car was destroyed. She was severely injured. Surgery was performed, but I can't tell you the results yet. I want to see her. The only people left in her life are her husband and me. Come back the next morning. When Reza Ivanovna came home, Ivan was not there. His phone was off and he decided not to answer it. Even at night, he did not return home. She had a hard time falling asleep and stayed up all night. Besides, at 7 a.m., she was already standing on the doorstep of the hospital. From her conversation with the doctor, she learned that Natashenka would survive, but that she would need care and additional surgery to regain mobility. She had lost a baby. She was allowed to enter her sister-in-law's room. "Everything will be all right, daughter." Her mother-in-law stroked her hand and whispered softly, "Everything will get better, and we will help you get back on your feet." "How is Ivan doing?" she asked quietly. "He is doing well. He will come to see you soon. And you are sleeping. He said it would be good for me to breathe in the pines, but I didn't want to go there." "Then he did," she sobbed, covering her face with her palms. "Okay, stop it, okay. The doctor advised me not to worry. I'll be back soon." Reza Ivanovna returned home. Her son was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea, as if nothing had happened. "Your wife is in the hospital, and you're sitting here." "I was hurt too, Mom." "And where were you all night? How did this happen?" "I had to rest." "And how is Natasha?" He asked indifferently. "Natasha is alive, but she has lost the baby." She needs another operation. She needs care to get back to a normal life. Tell her I'm sorry." "What do you mean, tell her? You're not going to see your wife. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I've been in love with someone else for a long time. She is my boss and appreciates me. Here's compensation for Natasha." He pointed to the envelope on the table. "You're just like your father. How can you? Don't you remember how hard it was for us when he left us for that rich girl?" "I remember. That's why I left the money." He got up and went into his room, and a few minutes later came out with a suitcase. He threw the keys to the apartment on the shelf in the corridor and slammed the door. Reza Ivanovna dropped her head in her arms and wept. How could he do this to Natashenka and to her? After sobbing for half an hour, she pulled herself together. "Tears can't help grief. And my daughter needs me." A month later, Natasha was discharged home, but she could not walk yet. Reza Ivanovna used the money left by her son to buy a special bed and a wheelchair. Natasha's co-workers helped transfer her home. Natasha resigned herself to her husband doing this to her. She had no strength to be angry, and she was immensely grateful to her mother-in-law for not abandoning her. "Natasha, how could I leave you? You're my daughter, my real daughter. Everything will work out and we'll cope with everything. And it's New Year's Eve, and I think you and I will have the same wish. And miracles do happen. You just have to believe in them and help yourself." At 12:30 in the morning, the doorbell rang. On the threshold stood the young man who had helped transfer Natasha home today. "You know, I have no one to celebrate the new year with. Can I come? If not, I understand." You could see how embarrassed the guy was. "Come on in, deputy. We're happy to have guests." Oleg brought some fruit and sweets, and after the chime he helped to take Natasha outside to watch the fireworks. Reza Ivanovna immediately noticed the way he was looking at her daughter-in-law, but she kept quiet. She was not against it, on the contrary, but she understood that Natasha was not yet ready. Natasha smiled for the first time in the last month. She loved to watch the fireworks. At that moment she felt like a little child. Since then, Oleg periodically came and helped to take the stroller outside so that Natasha could get some fresh air. And Reza Ivanovna learned how to give massages. Today the women had a serious conversation. "Natashenka," the doctor called. "He said that you can have a second operation, after which there is a chance to get on your feet. But we don't have that much money. Unless we sell your parents' apartment. I know it's your only place to live, and you'd be scared to do it. So here." She held out a piece of paper. Natasha unfolded it and saw that it was a deed to Reza Ivanovna's apartment. "But what about your son?" "He'll be left without an apartment. I no longer have a son, but I have a daughter," said Reza Ivanovna and embraced the girl. A month later, Natasha had an operation. It was successful, and the girl was on the mend. It was a long way to full recovery, but they would be fine. Oleg continued to visit Natasha. "Natasha, do you like Oleg?" Reza Ivanovna once asked. Natasha blushed. "Come on, I can see everything. Since New Year's Eve, you know, I like him." "So do I," she replied. Oleg today, it was as if he could feel what was being said about him. Today he was going to talk to Reza Ivanovna, and here he is at her house and doesn't know where to start. "Do you mean that you love Natashenka?" Reza Ivanovna asked straight out. "And how did you understand?" Oleg, "Well, I'm not 20 years old, and I see everything. I do not mind. But if you hurt my daughter..." He did not let her finish. "I do not hurt, never. I always liked her, ever since college. But she was married, so I didn't even go near her. And then I found out that the staff was collecting help, and that they were looking for someone who could help physically. And then I decided this was my chance. I want to propose to her. So do it. What are you waiting for?" After this conversation he got up, thanked Reza Ivanovna, and rushed to the hospital. Of course, Natasha agreed, but she said that the wedding would only take place when she was firmly on her feet. 6 more months passed, and Reza Ivanovna looked at her daughter in a dazzlingly beautiful soft blue dress and handsome Oleg beside her. The party was organized right at home. Oleg's parents could not come. It turned out they lived abroad. Neither Reza Ivanovna nor Natasha had ever been particularly interested in the financial situation of the boy or who his parents worked. They only knew that they lived far away, and the rest was unimportant. "Mom, we have a present for you. Today is your wedding day, not mine." The young couple laughed and held out an envelope. There was a voucher for 2 weeks to a sanatorium. "You should have a rest. You deserve it. You'll warm yourself in the sun by the sea." Reza Ivanovna had never had such a good rest. She was on her way home today. She told her children that she would not have to meet them, and that Mikhail Pavlovich, who she had met in the sanatorium, would give her a lift. When she tried to open the apartment, the key did not fit. Strange, she thought. But then the door opened, and in front of her was a woman she did not know. "Who do you want?" she asked dryly. "I'm sorry, but I live here." "I don't. I bought this apartment a week ago." Reza Ivanovna turned to her friend. Could it be that the children did this to her? They couldn't have. It was all in her eyes. But then she saw Natasha and Oleg running up the stairs. "Mom, I'm sorry. The traffic. We wanted to surprise you and almost gave you a heart attack. Let's go outside." "Natashenka, I'm not at home anymore," quietly, with her eyes downcast, asked Reza Ivanovna. "You'll put me in a nursing home." "I will not allow it," Mikhail Pavlovich intervened. "No one will surrender anyone anywhere," said Oleg loudly. "We bought you another apartment, and it is registered in your name. You will live with us next door. After all, we will soon need grandmother's help." When Reza Ivanovna entered the new apartment, she could not believe her eyes. Spacious 2-room apartment with good furniture and appliances, and not far away a beautiful large park. "It's in this park that we'll walk with you, Rychka," said Mikhail Pavlovich. He went with them to make sure that the woman would be all right. "By the way, I live over there," and he pointed with his finger in the distance. There was a high-rise building also by the park. Oleg and Natasha looked at the elderly couple and smiled. After all, Reza Ivanovna deserved to be happy like no one else. "And now let's go to our apartment. The table is laid there, and my parents want to meet you." "Mikhail Pavlovich, you are also welcome," said Oleg and winked at the man. You are about to hear a very exciting and emotional story. Olesya was graduating from college. A very important stage in her life was about to begin. The stage when she would have to start a completely independent life, decide on her future, her job, her family. The girl was very worried. She realized that it is necessary to make the right choice, because her parents simply cannot give her a chance to another education. Olesya's father was already 62 years old, and her mother was 54. In other words, the girl was late. Her older brother Anton had died 2 years earlier. He had failed to drive in rainy weather. Somehow her parents got over the loss of their son, but Olesya saw how hard it had become for them to live with such a loss. Both became very old, bracing themselves for their daughter, but the girl understood everything. She loved her brother very much herself, and she missed him. It was for this reason that Olesya could not afford to make a mistake in choosing her future fate. She needed to support her parents, not sit on their necks, as they say. However, it was very difficult for the girl to explain all this to her boyfriend, who she had started dating in her second year. Pavel was much less responsible and solved almost all his problems with the help of his father's money, who owned a construction company. He closed his student debts with bribes, and he met people at parties that he himself organized. Pasha is a good guy, He loves Olesia, but he relies too much on his father's finances, and this discouraged the girl. It was as if they were from different planets. Well, Pasha jumped on the couch with his feet and put his head on Olesia's lap, covering Olesia's beloved Bulgakov. "Any plans for the evening?" "Here, I'm reading a book," smiled the girl. "By the way, you crumpled up my page." "Yeah? Well, sorry. Let's go and buy you a new book." Pasha nonchalantly shrugged his shoulders. "No, this is a special book." Olesia put the bookmark and put the book on the table. "My godfather gave it to me as a present on my 15th birthday. And a year later, exactly 1 year later, he was pushed under a streetcar." "Oh my God, sorry, Pasha was afraid that he hit a sore subject, but Olesia just laughed. "Yes, everything is fine with him. Do not worry. Godfather says that Anushka hasn't spilled the oil yet, and you can't die of a streetcar accident any other way. Is that so? You know you scared me. You owe me a fine for that." Pasha took 2 tickets of some kind out of his back pocket. "Look, a boat trip. Night cruise. Just us and the captain and the crew." "Pasha." Olesia smiled. Of course she wanted to go on a yacht, but how much did such a pleasure cost? Clearly, more than the guy earned from testing games. Where did such luxury come from? "Well, my dad helped out a little," Pavel reluctantly admitted. He knew how Olesia perceived such things. "But actually, my business is a success for me too." "Really? Tell me," Olesia asked curiously. Pavel suddenly became serious, jerked up from the girl's lap, and sat cross-legged. "Do you remember? I was testing different games. Well, that was just the beginning. There I was, mostly, trying to figure out who was what. And when I met one of the developers there, we got to talking. I mentioned that I was trained as a designer, and he suggested that I make my own project." Olesia understood practically nothing of what the guy just told her, but by the flashed eyes of Pasha it was clear he was very pleased. "Wow, congratulations to you." Olesia kissed the guy. "But that's not all," Pavel solemnly announced. "If the game goes well, the percentage of the profits we share equally. Will it be a lot?" "Well, for the start of his business, I hope it will be enough. As a last resort, I'll ask my father." Yes, don't look at me like that." He raised his hands in a defensive gesture. He wouldn't mind helping himself. "Well," sighed Olesia, "I'm glad for you, really." "And why just for me?" Pasha slyly squinted. "You and I will be together forever." A loud statement. She smiled. "Don't you believe it?" She shrugged, and the boy grinned and hugged her. Well, it was a mistake. The night cruise on the yacht was unforgettable. Indeed, it was just the 2 of them, except for a couple of waiters who brought out champagne and appetizers, the captain, whom they saw only at the beginning and end of the walk, and a couple of assistant captains, who must have been somewhere. Olesia took her breath away from the beautiful views of Street Petersburg at night, and Pasha, apparently more accustomed to this kind of entertainment, was simply delighted that his girlfriend was enjoying herself. After the successful defense of his degree, Pavel's parents had given him a 2-room apartment. The guy immediately invited Olesia to live together. The girl didn't think long. She loved Pasha, and he loved her. Why not start living together? Maybe in the future it would lead to something bigger. When the moving and setting up of the new apartment was done, Olesia was finally able to get a suitable job. Even though she was paid less as a beginner, but it was still a good start. But with Pavel, negative changes were happening. He became more and more fond of games. He could sit at the computer all day long. At first, Olesia thought the guy was working, until she accidentally glanced at the screen. "Pash, do you play?" the girl asked perplexedly. "Yeah," the guy said, not taking his eyes off the screen. "I thought you were supposed to be designing the game, weren't you?" "Oh, listen, it didn't work out," the boy brushed her off. Olesia shrugged and went to the shower. Pasha had the money, which meant that he'd hooked his father back up with his well-being. Olesya did not like it. She paid her expenses with her own salary. She and Pavel went to the store as needed, paid whoever was convenient. The girl was not financially dependent on her boyfriend. Another thing was that she no longer felt his love. The guy lied to her about the games, although if you think about it, he did not lie much. Olesya just decided for herself that Pasha worked. It turned out that he was just having fun and his father was paying for his life. In addition, all communication between the couple came to nothing. They had lunch together, and then they had at least some conversation. Olesya had time to keep the house in order, to cook, to work. Pasha could not even find the time to banally ask how the girl was doing, not to mention helping her in any way. The girl was heartbroken to realize that her feelings were not what they used to be. Time passed. A year later, nothing had changed. And after 2 years, neither had changed. Pasha still spent her time at the computer. Olesya tried to make more money and, like a fish on ice, trying to improve her relationship with her boyfriend. Pavel became rather irritable. He never got a job. Olesya was tired of this. She could just rent an apartment for herself and not live with Pavel. But she stayed with him only because she hoped that he would come to his senses. "Olesya, where's my yogurt?" Pavel shouted from behind the computer. "In the fridge," she said, finishing another project on her laptop. "Can you bring it to me? I'm working." "Please," the boy begged. Suddenly, that please of his made Olesya mad. What the hell? Why doesn't he do anything to start an independent life? He can't even get his own yogurt out of the fridge. That's nonsense. The girl sat for a few seconds, trying not to get hysterical. Then she saved her work data, closed the lid of her laptop, and walked over to her boyfriend. He looked at her with surprised eyes. Olesya also gave her lover a look. He completely let himself go. At 27, he looked 40, already with a belly, unshaven, untidy beard, oil stain on a tight t-shirt. Suddenly, Olesya realized that this was not the Pasha she loved. Though he lived at his parents' expense, at least he cared about her and loved her more. And now in front of her in an expensive computer chair sat a typical 30-year-old gigolo. "No yogurt?" Paul asked. "Pash, we need to talk. Now." He looked at the screen. "Yes, right away." "Well, let's talk in about 15 minutes, he whimpered again. "In 15 minutes, Pash. I'll finish packing." Cut off Olesya. "Are you going somewhere?" She rolled her eyes. "Pasha, you've changed a lot in these 2 years," Olesya said, ignoring the furious pressing of buttons. "I thought that at least you'd get a job, finally get off the neck of your parents. But no, you sit and play. I thought we were gonna have a family, but then again, you're just playing. I thought we'd be happy together, but guess what? That's right, you're just playing again. I'm tired of it. I'm 26 years old. I just want to get married now, have a baby so I don't have to let him out of college at 55, and then go back to the job I love. But you don't care about my wishes at all. Well, what do you want from me?" Paul made a martyr look on his face. "I want you to grow up," shouted the girl in the heart. "You may play on weekends in your spare time, but at almost 30 years of age, not to have a job is a shame." "I don't understand why you're yelling at me," Pavel replied coldly. "As far as you can remember, I have an apartment, which, by the way, you also live in. And I also have money, which, by the way, you can use to go out. What else do you want from me? Pasha, none of this is yours. It's your father's." "Okay, stop yelling seriously. You're distracting me from the game. Can't you see that? Besides, what do you care where I get my money from? It's just there, that's all. There's a difference. Your parents won't live forever, and you don't even know the exact name of your father's firm. How are you gonna run it? You can't be anything without a handout from your parents." "All right, that's it." Paul threw the headphones away, jumped to his feet, and clenched his fists. For a moment, Olesia thought he was going to hit her. "Get out, and don't you ever show your face to me again." Olesia immediately retreated to the door. Tears glistened in her eyes. This was what he had become. The boyfriend of her dreams, once kind, caring, irresponsible, true, but still good. Now he was like a pissed-off rhinoceros, clumsy, but pretty strong. And worst of all, to see his hands clench into fists and ready to strike. Not a minute more here. The girl walked out with her back to the front and closed the door behind her. She knew by the creak of leather and the quick clicking of keys that Pasha had sat down to play again and must have his headphones on. Olesia went to the closet, got her bag, quickly threw in the necessary things, took her laptop, phone, documents, and slipped out of the unfortunate apartment unnoticed. Or maybe Pavel deliberately did not stop her. After all, he was angry. In any case, Olesia was glad to get out of the house. The girl had to spend the night in a hotel, because at night she could not find a decent place to stay. But after work, she could try. In the morning, she called a real estate agent and described her preferences in finding an apartment. Then she went to work, and afterwards she went to meet the agent who had just selected the 3 most suitable options for her. She liked 2 apartments, but one was very far from her place of work, so Olesia did not have to worry much about the choice. The girl quickly chose the one she liked. The apartment was a 1-room apartment with a separate bathroom. The kitchen was very spacious. She could easily put a wall and make another room. All the necessary furniture was there. 2 closets, one for outdoor clothes in the hallway, the other in the bedroom. A bed in the bedroom, a couple of drawers. In the kitchen, there was a dining table, refrigerator, sofa, where you could arrange a second bed, a small coffee table. From here, you could get to the glazed balcony, where there was another table and 2 soft puffs, and the floor was covered with carpet to keep your feet warm in winter. In the bathroom, there was a washing machine. In a word, all the amenities were there. The only thing missing was a microwave. Well, that's not a problem, Olesia decided. And the price for such an apartment was quite low, which pleased her. After all, now every ruble counted for her. Pavel did not call her either that day or the next. He did not call her a week later either. Olesia was offended. Did all those years of relationship mean nothing to him? Or maybe he just hadn't noticed her leaving. Or maybe he thinks that the girl won't live alone and come back to him. Well, no, that was definitely not going to happen. Olesia tried not to get on her nerves, to concentrate on her work, to send money to her parents, and Pasha, she hoped, would get over it. After a month, Pavel still bothered to dial Olga's number. The girl was only beginning to miss him a little less, the old him, when every night he discussed the day with her, showered her with attention, cuddled her affectionately, covered her with a warm blanket at night, made her 2 cups of tea. Olesia never wanted money from Pasha. She just wanted to love and be loved. But now, looking at the contact, she no longer felt that the inscription on the screen, beloved, was telling the truth. Hello. Olesia took the call after all. Where are you? Murmured the guy into the tube. Nevertheless, when the girl heard his voice, her heart ached. She still loved him, still wanted to be with him. And then she remembered the night she had literally run away from her boyfriend. It lifted her spirits a little. You told me to get lost, so I left. Not funny, where are you? The guy insisted. There was no warmth, no tenderness, no concern in his voice. From his tone, Olesia realized that Pasha just wants to get his property back. I am not your father's gift, where I should not concern you now. You should take care of yourself first. Ols, do you really want to break up like this? Pasha, she sighed. Thank God you did not hit me. And I wasn't 100% sure that you wouldn't do that. Are you insane? Out of the blue, the guy just went berserk. That's not a good word for it. Goodbye, Paul. Olesia dropped the call, turned off the phone and cried. In fact, she was in terrible pain, but she knew that this was the end. And it was not worth it to humiliate herself and bend anyway. She could not get back what she had. Pavel no longer called Olesia, and little by little her pain subsided. The girl climbed up the career ladder, took out a mortgage, and bought an apartment. It was very similar to the rented apartment where she had started her new life without Pasha. The only difference was a decorative wall with an archway dividing the kitchen, just as Olesia had wanted. The girl signed up for fitness and enjoyed going to the gym, switched to a proper diet, and by the age of 30 she looked better than she did at 25. Maybe Pasha's absence also played a positive role. One day after the gym, she went to a coffee shop to discuss another project with a client. She made a call only to the customer secretary. He was a busy man and could barely find time for a personal meeting. After a few minutes of waiting, a tall man in a business suit entered the coffee house. He threw a glance around the hall and confidently made his way to Olesia's table. "Hello, are you our designer?" "Olesia." He smiled, sparkling with snow-white teeth. "Yes, it's me," she replied with an equally dazzling smile. "And you are Maxim Oligovich, right?" Yes. How nice that you are so beautiful. I noticed you at once." He paid a compliment. The customer sat opposite. "Thank you." A slight blush appeared on my cheeks. It had been a long time since Olesia had received a compliment. Well, of course, she spent all her time at work or in the gym, forgetting about her personal life and the dream of a strong family. Let's move on to the project, shall we? And the business acumen is there. A dream and not a girl. Maxim Oligovich did not resign himself. Olesia looked at him suspiciously, but did not notice that he was flattering on purpose, not at all. He complimented her sincerely. "Maybe you also know how to cook." "It has little to do with the case, but apparently I can," grinned Olesia. "That's all. Marry me," laughed the customer. Olesia also laughed, because she simply did not know how to react to such behavior. "Okay, or else you will think that some clown got caught and it is not worth cooperating with me. You know, it's been a long day. Do you mind if we have coffee first, and then we can talk about the project? Or are you in a hurry?" "No, I'm not in a hurry. I'm done for the day," smiled Olesia. She found herself thinking that she was very pleasant to talk with this man. His humor was on the edge of acceptability, but it was very catchy in a good way. "Wonderful." The man smiled and beckoned to the waiter who was passing by. He did not hesitate to order, looked questioningly at Olesia. "Have you decided?" Yes, I'll have a cappuccino, please." Olesia turned to the waiter. "And your honey cakes for the lady," immediately added Maxim Oligovich. "Oh no, They are made of natural honey, very delicious. Your figure won't suffer a bit, I guarantee it," quietly assured the girl. Olesia smiled embarrassedly and nodded. She really wanted to believe this man, even in small things, and she did not know why. "You know the menu so well. Have you been here before?" the girl asked. "Of course I have. I like to come here after work and drink coffee. By the way, the gym over there is mine." Maxim Oligovich pointed at the fitness center, where Olesia just worked out. "Wow, I came straight from there," the girl exclaimed in amazement. "No way." Maxim Oligovich raised his eyebrows. "I would have noticed you." Olesia laughed at his jokes heartily and sincerely. It turned out that Maxim, who demanded to be called that without his patronymic, owns a chain of sports establishments and several bars. Just for one of them, and had to develop a new design. "Why did you choose such different branches?" Olesia asked. "Well, it all started with something else." Maxim leaned back in his chair. "My father is also a man of means, but at my 18 he said that he had no intention to support me. And I had such a panic there. I thought that he had already packed my suitcases. He could believe me. But no, it was just decided to evict me to a rented apartment, but I collected my own food. Well, what could I do? I was still in school. I went into bartending, gained some experience during my year there, and with my father's help, I opened my first bar while I was still in college. My father only helped as an investor. The profits from that place go to him too, although he was not going to take it, but I persuaded him in gratitude. I really owed him a lot. And then I realized that it was possible to expand, met several owners of construction firms, built a small network of bars. I thought on that and rest, but no. I thought about settling down from there, but no. You know, one example really sticks in my mind. One day, I was sitting with my friends, relaxing, having fun. An acquaintance of mine, who had a job to build a bar, came in with his family, with his wife and son. Well, the family walked over to the sofas, made an order, and I decided to say hello, especially since the man was standing at the bar very sad and drinking pure whiskey. We got to talking, and he complained about his son. He said he provided for him everything, and he wouldn't lift a finger. The story is typical, a spoiled son, but I looked at this son, and he wasn't my age, but the same age as my conversation partner. That is, the son looked terrible, fat, unshaven, with dirty hair, problem skin, a sagging chin. And that's when I realized I didn't want to become the same sorry, untidy bore. Part of my seasonal profits were put aside, and then at a bargain price I managed to buy out a couple of buildings. Fitness shot better than I expected, and I was soon able to expand. But if I hadn't looked at what could become of me then, I wouldn't have thought of it. Olesya listened to Maxim's story and understood who he was talking about. It was Pavel, her ex-boyfriend, whom she had loved so much that she hadn't noticed his flaws. This was what he looked like from the outside. I seem to have bored you with such a long story. Maxim grinned. No, it's just that I know this man. How small the world is. The man looked into her eyes. Let's not spoil such a wonderful evening. He immediately realized that Olesya did not want to talk about Paul. Yes, Olesya agreed with a sigh of relief. They talked some more, then discussed the project, exchanged phone numbers, and parted ways. But the standard procedure in no way wanted to get into the workplace only. It seemed to Olesya that Maxim liked her, and she certainly liked him. Olesya approached his project very responsibly and carefully. She delivered everything ahead of schedule and to the highest standard. Maxim admired her work. "You know, you are the best designer I have ever seen in my life," said Maxim quite seriously. Olesya smiled. She was pleased with the praise. "Thank you. Well, I guess this is goodbye, isn't it? Is that what you want?" Maxim suddenly asked. Olesya was confused and didn't know what to answer. Seeing her embarrassment, the man continued. "We can celebrate our cooperation, the completion of the project. I'd say I insist, but I'm afraid of frightening you." "Believe me, you don't scare me," the girl stressed. "And why not risk it? She's 30. What's she got to lose already?" "Okay, I agree to celebrate." "Wow, that's great news. Then I'll pick you up. I'd love to show you around my place, but we'll have dinner at the restaurant first, okay?" "What a wonderful idea," smiled Olesya and left him her address. At the appointed time, Maxim arrived to pick up Olesya in a fancy car with a private driver. Of course, even Olesya did not want to drink smoothies at the bar. The girl wore a short black dress, following the fashion classics. Maxim was in a black three-piece suit. He came out to meet Olesya and gallantly gave her his hand. "You look beautiful." He gently touched his lips to her fingers. "Thank you. Dark shades suit you very well," replied Olesya. Maxim looked at her mesmerized in the car, but did not say anything, as if he was afraid of disturbing some sacred moment. The driver took them to one of the most prestigious and expensive restaurants in St. Petersburg. Dinner went wonderfully. Maxim finally remembered that the lady needed to be entertained with conversation. During the conversation, it became clear that they had a huge variety of common topics. Sports, music, painting, even horseback riding were in their common interests. Unbelievable. "You have been riding since you were 13?" Olesya asked in amazement when they had already left the restaurant and went to the bar. "Sure, I even remember that the first horse I rode was named Almas. I loved him very much, in spite of the fact that he threw me out of the saddle a couple of times," grinned Maxim. "And I only rode horses a few times, but it was just wonderful," Olesya replied dreamily. "So we can make up for it. Do you have plans for tomorrow?" Olesya shook her head in denial. "But you are wrong. We're going horseback riding in Vyborg." "Oh, well, I do not even know," Olesya embarrassedly replied, realizing that Maxim will not let her pay for this trip. "We are not best friends with you." "And why are we still not?" "First of all, let's switch to you." The driver parked the car, and Maxim was the first to get out of the car, opening the door for Olesya. The girl still hadn't managed to get the paint off her face. "What do you say, Le?" "Okay, come on," she answered with a smile. Her father called her Lesya. She still had a very warm association with the name. The bar was amazing. It combined innovation and homeliness. Olesya liked it very much. She and Maxim had a drink, got even more acquainted, laughed and danced. And when they returned to the sofa to have a little break, suddenly Maxim put his arm around her waist and drew her to him for a kiss. A single thought crossed Olesya's mind. At last, she realized that she had been waiting for this all night. "I overreacted, right?" Maxim asked uncertainly, pulling away a little. Instead of an answer, Olesya wrapped her arms around his neck and once again fused their lips in a kiss. 6 months later, Olesya and Maxim were married. They loved each other and did not understand how they could live together before. A month after the wedding, Olesya became pregnant. Maxim was overjoyed and literally carried Olesya in his arms. And one day she cried because Maxim loved her too much. She was so grateful to him. He supported her and cared for her, helped her parents, providing them with a decent old age, every day for several hours talking to Olesya. And she was happy. She finally loved and was loved, just as she had dreamed. That's all. Subscribe and watch my other videos. Thanks for watching. Write your opinion on these stories in the comments.